Hello everyone, this is Aegon of Astora here, and welcome back to Dark Souls 2 Let's Talk Lore. This is episode 20, and since one cannot remain in memory for long, I will save the niceties until after we've spoken with Vendrick.
Seeker of fire, I see you've subdued another foul creature. One of the Father of the Abyss spawn. That confounded quintessence of humanity. The Abyss once had form, but then dissipated. And yet, traces of its existence endured. Each fragment, thirsting for power, spread dark with no relent. My dear Chandra was one such fragment. A feeble, tiny thing that thirsted for power more than any other. Driven by insatiable lust for a worthy vessel.
So, we might imagine, based on him referring to Nishandra as, quote-unquote, my dear Chandra, that there certainly, at least on Vendrick's behalf, existed feelings of some sort. And that he wasn't just, he didn't just one day say, oh my god, you are a fragment of dark from your fragment of Manus, and that therefore, I have no interest in even entertaining the possibility or even remembering whatever good times they may or may not have had together.
Fire came to be, and with it, disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, light and dark. Dark was seen as a curse. Shadow is not cast, but born of fire. And the brighter the flame, the deeper the shadow. Inherit fire and harness the dark. Such is the calling of a true leader.
So again, more philosophical musings about the nature of light and dark. And that with light came disparity. Prior to which there was only gray of when the dragons ruled the world.
Dark was inherent such.
In particular, the line I find most interesting is, dark is not... What is it he says?
Shadow is not...
Shadow is not cast, but born of fire. Very, very interesting kind of... interesting way of articulating the non-mutual exclusivity of light and dark. So as you can see, I've done a few things off camera. First thing is that I'm carrying an Espada Ropera, which gives me an additional 10 attack damage over the rapier. Additional 5, so not a heck of a lot, but it looks much, much cooler in my opinion. And then the other thing is that I've, came and unlocked this bonfire, dealt with the prowlers, and yes, bought some consumables. I finished more or less leveling up. Level 171, I know I'm over-leveled, but I very much enjoy that 110 agility, those extra iframes, together with the 40-40-40-40 quality build. So this is rather interesting in that this is not the memory of Sir Lon, but the memory of the Old Iron King, which implies that the Old Iron King set up this mural, I guess, to honor the memory of the man who, you might say, the muscle behind the industrial might of the old Iron King. But certainly muscle not in a derogatory way, but as we'll see, he's quite honorable. So we are going to summon the NPCs, not for the boss fight, but for the lead up to the boss fight, because if you've done this area before, you know how ridiculous it can be. In particular, the fact that, and I suppose it makes sense lore-wise, but the fact that in the Iron Keep, and I went there to get a key, but we'll get to that later, to get the, what's it called? The Iron Key. Opens the iron door of the Iron Keep. Although it doesn't actually open the door in the Iron Keep, it opens the door in Forest of Fallen Giants, but we'll get to that later. And I was curious. I hit, with this same Espada Ropera, same ring setup and everything, 2 hits it takes to kill the Aegon Knights in the Iron Keep, each of which staggers them, in addition to only taking 2 hits to finish them off. Whereas here, it takes 4 hits to finish them off, and they have a great, significantly increased amount of poise. And so, and it might even be anachronistic to describe these knights as Aegon Knights, because the Aegon Knights were named after Sir Aegon by the old Iron King. And so it could make sense, lore-wise, that these Aegon Knights are ridiculously overpowered compared to their Iron King counterparts. Because these, you could probably make an argument for these being the elite Aegon Knights. Black Steel Katana, I don't think we've gotten that yet. Black Steel Katana wielded by Aegon Knights, one of the sturdiest types of katana, preferred by masters of the quick draw. In the heyday of his land, the old Iron King fancied entertaining dubious and eccentric guests from faraway lands. Most of them were charlatans, but among the riffraff was an unusual knight from the far east. He trained the Iron King's men in the sword in obedience to his new lord. So that is referring, of course, to Sir Aegon. And this, presumably, is where he, I don't want to say fled to, where he, it's hard to come up with a word that kind of captures where he retired to, I think is a better way of putting it. But we'll get into that particular aspect of the story in just a little bit. I don't think I'm going to kill all of the enemies, but certainly it's worthwhile taking out those guys. I don't even know what the heck they're called. Yeah, this is the 5th episode I've done today, which might be a record for me. And the reason for that is just, busy, and today was the day that I wasn't so busy. And so it's been 3 or 4 hours since I recorded the last episode, in between which I was, doing some laundry, doing some editing, doing some laundry while waiting for things to render, as well as coming to this area. And you may have noticed that some of the items have already been picked up. These guys do so little damage. Is he actually two-handing his weapon, though? Yeah, he's actually two-handing it. Generally, Drifter Swordsman Idol only seems to one-hand his twin blade, in which case you might appropriately ask him why in the world he's using a twin blade if he's just going to one-hand it. But no, although he's still doing pitiful damage with it. Guys, if you're gonna stand in my way, at least tank the damage, please. See, I bought 99 life gems. Because I ran out of life gems attempting to get on tape me getting a flawless victory against Sir Aegon. But it was not working out. I tried for about 10 minutes of, getting about 25% of the way. The closest I got was, I got his health down to about 40%. At which point, he would do some attack that I wasn't expecting at all, leading me to, if you quit and reload the game, you wind up outside the fog gate. And so, I just kept quitting and reloading, popping life gems, going back in, and he would always wind up hitting me. I've never done the getting him to commit. I want to say getting him to commit Sudoku. I know that that's just a joke, but don't recall the actual term. Seppuku? I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that as well, so I apologize. Yes, I'm aware one can't reside in memory for long. We're going to use a repair powder as well. Sir Aegon gives us a little nod before we begin to fight, so... Gotta watch my stamina. Oh! I think that was the closest I got. No need for me to be... I was quiet trying to concentrate there. Thinking that that was the time. That was finally going to happen, but alas... A worthy opponent and an awesome boss. So this is his retreat. Very just wonderful, beautiful looking. It's not entirely clear where it is, but it does seem as though it takes place within, or at least the architecture is strikingly similar to that of the rest of the Old Iron King's kingdom. It looks very similar to that which we've seen throughout the DLC, but also in the Iron Keep as well. Quite wonderful. So, we have a soul. Soul of Sir Aegon, who once served the Old Iron King. Sir Aegon came from an eastern land and became the king's most trusted knight. We also have an Aegon Knight Captain armor. Armor worn by the captain of the Aegon Knights. The accoutrements of the Elan Knights who served the Old Iron King were created with an advanced casting technique. They remain solid and handsomely crafted. The design is styled after the armor worn by an unusual knight who trained the Iron King's men in the sword. He was said to have deserted his liege, that is his liege lord, after bearing witness to his descent into depravity. So, Sir Elan certainly was a self-respecting man who, for one reason or another, had a enormous sense of devotion to the Old Iron King. But at a certain point, the Old Iron King seemingly crossed a line that went too far. Tested his devotion, and yeah, Sir Elan just said, enough is enough. Of course, we get a smelter wedge. This must be a part of the Old Iron King's kingdom. So, this would have been, I guess, kind of the last line of defense between Sir Elan and the Old Iron King. Because this is clearly the Old Iron King's chair. In each of the memories, the item you touch to leave the memory is either the person whose memory it is or something very much associated with the person. In which case, this would seem to indicate that the Old Iron King covered up the fact that Sir Elan was killed. But why is the Iron King not here? Lots of questions. Lots and lots of questions. So before we move on to the third and final DLC, we have a few loose ends to take care of. The first of which, as I mentioned, I went to the Iron Keep and picked up the Iron Key, which opens not as suggested on the key, a door in the Iron Keep, but opens a door down here. And here we have more of the same enemies, the salamanders, that's what they're called, who the Iron King kept as defensive sentries, I guess, in whatever part of his castle we were just in. These guys are somewhat of a pain to fight, so I am going to poison them. I will melee them as well, but I might have to fall back and heal periodically. They have so much health, too. Where are you going? Ouch, ouch, ouch. Oh, I'm stuck on him. This guy's just one more shot now. There we go. Now this feller over here. No idea how to dodge their attacks. At least the ones in the DLC are more or less stationary. These ones flop around like crazy. Oh, and trap you as well. I need to get out of here and heal. Yeah, I have no idea how to fight these guys, other than to just try and out-DPS them and heal. Like, what are you supposed to do there? That's crazy. Alright, I'm poisoning you. I'm sorry. If you're gonna fight like that, then you leave me no choice. Where are you going, pal? And so it's interesting that this seemingly bite-sized piece of the Iron Kingdom exists within the Forest of Fallen Giants, which, while the Forest of Fallen Giants is an access point to Great Fireball, it's an access point to the Lost Bastille, which is part of, not necessarily part of the Iron King's old... See, this is part of the problem with my having not talked about Alkin and Ven. But, so, yeah, I'll step back from that point of contention for the moment. But it's very interesting that this place, with enemies seemingly associated with the old Iron King, exists here, within Vendrick's domain. Alright, I'm not going to bother dealing with any of these people. We actually got the shield that we came for. Yes, we are finally going to unpetrify Straight. It's weird for me too, because I'm so used to unpetrifying Straight being the first and foremost goal of every new build I've started since the 1.1 update with the release of the Agape Ring. So it's strange for me that I'm doing it at such a late stage as well. But better late than never. I hate these explodey pricks so much. So as I mentioned when we went down to the gutter, not all of these Aldean citizens die upon exploding, like the ones down in the gutter did. It would be very nice if they did. But, alas, they do not. We still don't have the Bastille key. I don't think we're going to bother getting it. But at least we unpetrified Straight fine.
Still a bit stiff, I'm afraid. I must thank you, young traveler. I am Strayed, a wandering sorcerer of sorts. I've been a guest for a very long time, but I don't think that anybody will miss me. Very good. Very good indeed. Cursed one, weak you may be, but I, Strayed, will teach you my spells.
Finally got the... It says mock, but I use it functionally as the shrug gesture. Because they never should have removed the shrug gesture. Actually, speaking of which, we should buy the Agape Ring. If for no other reason than to keep our soul memory from going any higher when I'm likely not going to level up much more. Although then I lose a ring slot, so we'll see. It's good to have it either way. Sunlight Blade. An ancient miracle of the sun, reinforces weapon in other hand with sunlight, a form of lightning. The sun grants life to all things upon earth, even if the worshippers of sunlight no longer bless the surface with their presence. The real meat and potatoes that we came for is here, though. So let's see, who are we interested in? Because we're not going to sit here and read the lore for every single item that's here. Actually, he doesn't have anything nothing really interesting at all in terms of the weapons, but the spells miracle that creates a giant soul mass and transforms it into lightning-spouting orb of light. Crafted in ancient times by the god of sun, but later forbidden by the same deity. Was it to protect the world from hatred or sorrow? And so I was, as soon as I read crafted in ancient times by the god of sun, I was going to say, but this wasn't in Dark Souls 1. And then the second half of that sentence is a nice way out of saying that it was crafted by the god of sun. Because, if Gwyn made it and then forbade it, then... Sacred Oath, an ancient miracle said to have been devised by warriors who once served the god of sun. Provides a temporary boost to the attack and defense of its caster and all nearby allies. I don't believe there is an equivalent spell in Dark Souls 1. In fact, I'm almost certain there isn't. But this, too, could indicate a couple of things by warriors who once served the god of sun, so it doesn't mention specifically a time period or that they were contemporaries of the god of sun. Serving the god of sun could be serving in his absence, after his death, after... If it's Gwyn, and I believe it is Gwyn, someone like Kingseeker Franth could technically say that he's serving Gwyn, although Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, is no longer there. It's just Gwyn, the Lord of Cinder. But pyromancy that imbues weapon in other hand with fire. Adds fire damage to the type of damage the weapon already inflicts. Pyromancy and sorcery are said to be like oil and water, but in fact their origins can be traced to a common source. What is that common source? Perhaps I'm just overtired, because that sounds strange to me, because pyromancy came from the Witch of Izalith, or do they mean this, that they found the Lord Souls in the flame? Do they originate from the Lord Soul? Is that what it's saying? I don't know. So that was a huge disappointment. I guess Ornifex has all the good stuff. I'm just gonna... Or actually, let's see if he has any interesting dialogue.
So, how long was I sat petrified? Long enough for the old kingdom to have crumbled, I see. Why didn't anyone wake me sooner?
Indicating that the Lost Bastille has been here for longer than Drangleic, or the Old Iron Kingdom, or Alkin, or Ven. This prison cell, unless, strangely enough, they built a prison around him, which I don't think makes any sense. He's been petrified here for a very long time. Placing the antiquity of the Lost Bastille way, way back. I guess, perhaps making sense of the lost part in the Lost Bastille.
Drang Lake. I've never heard the name. Is that what they call this place now? Very good. Very good indeed. The cursed ones were imprisoned within this land. Of course, you came of your own free will. The people feared the cursed ones like a plague. Some people would rather keep dreadful things out of sight, out of mind. In the end, they swept them up and corralled them here. So very typical of meek minds, don't you think?
Yeah, we really should have come here sooner, because that dialogue would have been perfect for when we actually were in the Lost Bastille.
Once people became aware of their own frailty, they seized anybody they found undesirable, cursed or no, and impounded them here. Whoever posed even the slightest threat was removed, all so that they could sleep better at night. They even turned the great Strayed into a stone.
Similar to, and yeah, reinforcing my point that I really should have talked to him sooner. When I described the Lost Bastille as a concentration camp, that is essentially exactly what Straight is describing.
Many kingdoms rose and fell on this tract of earth. Mine was by no means the first. Anything that has a beginning also has an end. No flame, however brilliant, does not one day splutter and fade. But then, from the ashes, the flame reignites, and a new kingdom is born, sporting a new face. It is all a curse. And it is your cursed flesh that will inherit the flame. Pyromancy was created by the ancient witch of fire. She harnessed the power of flame and melded it into pyromancy. The witch led her daughters into war against the old ones. But legends are legends. What are you prepared to believe?
Legends being legends, it appears as though either he has the story wrong, or there was a difference in terminology, because recall that he's been here petrified for a very, very long time. So we don't know how old he is or how long he's been here. But he said that the Witch of Izalith led a war against the Old Ones. And the Old Ones, to me, would probably refer to the four Lord Souls, of which the Witch of Izalith is one, having it make even less sense. Unless he's referring to the Bed of Chaos and its own kind of consciousness, or the Old Ones being the everlasting dragons. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I'll just walk off. I don't like pressing the B button with him because then he calls me stupid, and I don't appreciate that. So I usually just walk off. And the more he tells me not to walk off, the more likely I am to walk off. So before we go look at Ornifex's inventory and peruse some more item descriptions, there are a couple items that I have that I haven't read yet. One is I traded in the Fume Knight soul for the Fume Sword, which is one of my favorite weapons in the game. Straight sword forged from the soul of Fume Knight and imbued with the Dark Medallia. The exile swordsman, Rain, had the ability to expunge the black fog, but chose instead to live alongside it, in the company of the Child of Dark that haunts his sword. And of course, his sword does dark damage. Shield of the Rebel Rain. Rain and Velstadt were known as the left and right arms of the king, until their wills clashed and Rain was deemed a traitor. The Black Raven is despised as an augur of death, but it was Rain's favorite bird. So, it's been speculated that Rain and Velstadt had a falling out over Nashandra. That apparently Rain recognized that Nashandra's influence was that of the Dark. And he recognized something was amiss. If I said Velstadt, I meant Rain believed that. But Velstadt wouldn't have any of it, and remained fiercely loyal to King Vendrick, despite the same not necessarily being in Vendrick's own best interest. But nevertheless, Velstadt was the one who remained at the king's side, whereas Rain went to Broom Tower, and yet wound up, in the embrace of another Child of Dark. So, strange, interesting, out of the what's the term? Out of the pot into the frying pan, or something to that effect.
Hello there.
Yes, I do. Well, I do, but I'm not likely going to trade it with you. But katana forged from the soul of Sir Lon. The captivating, undulating design serves to enhance this weapon's mystical allure. Alon came from the east and soon became the Iron King's most trusted knight. When he departed, the old Iron King bequeathed Sir Alon's name to his Iron Warriors. So we might more appropriately describe those Alon Knights in the Old Iron King, the memory of the Old Iron King, as just Iron Warriors. Because to describe them as Alon Knights would be assigning a present category onto a historical event, which is what's termed ahistorical. In other words, not historical or incorrect. Fume Sword we've already read. A great sword forged from the soul of the Looking Glass Knight. Fearing something wicked, the king fled the castle and never returned. But his warrior, forever true to his command, stands ready to expunge those who would challenge him. So Defender, Watcher, Ruler Sword. I believe we've read this, but Great Sword of Vendrick, King of Drangleic. The strength of this sword is relative to the number of souls possessed by its wielder. Well, we haven't read that part, but I believe we read this next paragraph. One fragment of dark, having taken human shape, became obsessed with the king's soul. Impelled by its own cravings, it sought souls, and strove to make the strength of the giants its own. So the it in that paragraph is referring, of course, to Vendrick's dear Chandra, as he refers to her. Lost Sinner's Sword, an ultra great sword forged from the soul of the lost sinner. Its blade saps the life of its wielder. The true nature of this sword is unknown, even to the lost sinner herself. Those who choose this sword will share the burden of the lost sinner's misdeeds. Fume Ultra Greatsword. Ultra Greatsword forged from the soul of the Fume Knight. The exile swordsman Raim had the... Okay, so we've already read that one. Funny that it mentions that the dark haunts this sword, but this sword doesn't do dark damage like the Fume Sword does. Chaos Blade. A katana of unknown origins. Damage to foes also damages its owner. The peculiar pattern upon the blade suggests the sinister nature of this cursed blade. It is an alluring vortex and a lonely soul. Butcher's Knife. That's the word I was looking for when we were in Aldea's Keep. Great Hammer of the Royal Aegis. The power of this hammer's blessing has not faded completely, despite its being exposed to the dark of the undead crypt. Unleash its latent power with a strong attack. Sir Velstad, known as the Royal Aegis, gave himself to the king in both life and death. That he certainly did. Great Hammer forged from the soul of the old Iron King. The tip is formed of molten rock. The corpse of the old Iron King became the vessel that bred Icarus Earth. That is to say, the boss that we fought. The heavy rock tip is formed of cooled magma with a still smoldering core. Yorg's Spear. Spear wielded by Sir Yorg during his invasion of the Sanctum City. After his defeat of the Sunken King, Sir Yorg pierced Sin, the slumbering dragon, with this spear to claim its blood. But Sin immediately awoke, spewing a poisonous fog that blanketed the city in death, and Sir Yorg disappeared into the Eternal Sanctum. Not so much into the Eternal Sanctum as he was just lying there on the ground. Unless it's entirely possible that could have been one of Sir Yorg's men, but I very much doubt that. Soul of Alana, an armament forged from the soul of Alana, child of dark. Use strong attack to unleash its latent power. When the abyss dissipated, the things that called it home were fragmented and scattered across the realm. Eventually, these pieces regained form in ways that hinted at humanity's true nature. So that is, humans having a great darkness resting within them. A great shield created from the soul of the Looking Glass Knight can deflect spells. The Looking Glass at the castle is said to have been a passage to another world. So yeah, so that's about it. We've already bought. Can't buy infinite green blossom from her until we've defeated Nishandra. But before we do that, we have a whole DLC, the longest of the 3 DLCs, at least for me, to still complete. So for that, we need to go to Ruin Fork Road. So this is episode 20, and I imagine that there will be 1, perhaps 2 episodes of the of me playing through the Ivory King DLC. Again, I'm not going to do the challenge area, just as I skipped it for the first 2 DLCs. But I am, of course, going to do Ava, the King's Pet, and the Ivory King, or the Burnt Ivory King, rather. So that means potentially 22 episodes. Oh, and there was a loose end, now that I'm looking at my list, a loose end that I didn't tie up. So I'm thinking that after the defeat of the Burnt Ivory King, that we'll likely have 1 more loose ends episode before doing the final boss, which would put it at 24 or 25 episodes, potentially. Just hope you, everyone that's watching this, knows how much I appreciate the fact that you're watching this, and that those of you who may or may not have been here since the first episode of the series that I posted, which I watched again the other day, and I feel like I've certainly improved. That wasn't the best quality of commentary in that first episode. So thank you to all of you who have stuck with me through, now 20 episodes. And I hope that you will stick with me for however many are left, 3, 4, 5, whatever the case may be. But we're going to stop this one here. So thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you, hopefully, in the next one.